Weiss, Managing Director of Business Performance at BDO Chicago. BDO is a proud sponsor of today's program on women, entrepreneurship, and resilience. As a leader within BDO Women's Inclusion Program, I am both honored and excited for the opportunity to learn from the insights and wisdom shared by the remarkable women here today. At BDO, fostering growth, uplifting others, and ensuring people thrive isn't just a passion of mine, it's a core principle guiding our approach to supporting our professionals and our clients. This is integral to the assurance, tax, and advisory that we provide. With our global network of over 115,000 worldwide, we are well equipped to continuously support our clients and navigate the ever-evolving business landscape. Before we begin, I would like to go ahead and extend a warm welcome to the members of the Exec Club Board of Directors and Council of Advisors. Please stand when you hear your name called. Margaret Mueller, President and CEO of the Executive Club. Kelly Dittman, President and CEO of Sistine Global. Jessica Fairchild, Founder and Partner, Croak, Fairchild, Duarte, and Bears. Susan Gallagher, President and CEO of Brevarte. Darren Kemke, Officing Managing Partner, BDO USA. John Martin, Senior Partner, Victory Park Capital. Kristen Prince, Founder and Partner, The Prince Law Firm. Thank you for your steadfast commitment and leadership to the club. You may now be seated. On behalf of the Exec Club, thank you to all of today's sponsors, my firm, BDO, Croak, Fairchild, Duarte, and Bears, and the Prince Law Firm. I'd also like to acknowledge Exec Club's Signature Series sponsors for their unwavering support of programming throughout the season. If this is your first time at the Exec Club event, welcome, and we're so glad to have you joining us here today. If you are interested in learning more about the Exec Club and its community, please feel free to stop by the table after the event today. And now I would like to introduce Kristen Prince, Founding and Managing Partner of the Prince Law Firm, to introduce today's speakers. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Regina. That was a very nice welcome. Good afternoon, everyone. It is my privilege to introduce this fantastic panel of entrepreneurs. In my experience as both a woman and an entrepreneur, I found that we often actually have the benefit of being underestimated and the opportunity to impact how workplaces create more pathways to success for all stakeholders. I'm so excited to hear from the women on the stage today and learn how each of them have approached both the benefits and the challenges of entrepreneurship. Starr Marcello, the Deputy Dean of MBA Programs at Chicago Booth, will moderate today's conversation featuring 3 exceptional entrepreneurs. Yasmin Curtis, founder and CEO of 2 Fish Distribution and Crab Shack. Jennifer Freed, CEO and co-founder of Flow Medical. And Thru, Shivakumar, CEO and co-founder of Cohesion. Our panelists will share insights on inclusive innovation and how they have been reshaping entrepreneurship. Thank you, Starr. I'm going to turn it over now.
Thank you, and welcome everyone. It's very exciting to be with you this evening discussing something that is very important to me and hopefully to all of you, the opportunities and challenges for female founders. So I was going to start by just providing a little bit of context before we begin our panel discussion. Just to set expectations, this is 10 minutes or so, just to set the stage for a very dynamic conversation. A little bit about my background. As you heard, I'm the Deputy Dean for MBA Programs at Chicago Booth, which is great. I also teach entrepreneurship at the university and have spent about 20 years, next year it'll be 20 years, with entrepreneurs through my work there. I typically will work with founders at the earliest stages of venture creation, the idea stage, to help provide them with the resources they need to make a dream a reality. I don't think it will surprise anyone here to hear that those ideas are very hard to execute, and many ideas never end up soaring. So to say that starting a company from the ground up is hard is definitely an understatement. The opportunity that we're going to have in just a minute to hear from 3 amazing women who've been in the trenches and have gotten to where they are, I consider this to be a real gift, and I can't wait to get started. These women deserve a lot of respect and admiration. I think you're going to enjoy hearing their perspectives on their own journey to how they got where they are, and then hopefully maybe a little bit of advice for all of you. We're going to focus a lot on the positives in the world of female entrepreneurship, which I know a lot is said about the opposite. There's more than you might imagine to say on the topic of the positives. In the past 5 years, Chicago has seen a significant increase in the number of venture capital-backed startups, and more than a third of new venture-backed Chicago startups have at least one woman co-founder. Some context, this is a higher female founder percentage than Atlanta, Austin, Boston, Denver, Los Angeles, Miami, New York, San Francisco, or Seattle, putting Chicago in the #1 spot for VC-backed startups founded by women. You can be a little bit proud of that. What is Chicago doing that others maybe aren't doing? We're going to talk about that on the panel. By the way, in case you're wondering where this data is coming from, this is collected by Chicago Blend in partnership with World Business Chicago. And if you don't know, Chicago Blend publishes an annual report about the state of diversity in Chicago's venture capital and startup ecosystem. You can read their entire report online for free. I would encourage you to do that. Of course, I'll state also the obvious that it is still not the case that women have equal representation in the almanac of successful founders, and every year I look at the Forbes billionaire list, I will confess, just to see how far down you have to scroll before a woman's face appears. I will say for 2023, this is the most recent list you can look at. None are in the top 10, but Alice Walton appears at number 14, and I can tell you that the number of women billionaires is on the rise. Of the unicorn startups founded in 2021, 14 were founded by women, up from 11% in 2020. And again, if you don't know, a unicorn startup is one that has surpassed the $1 billion valuation mark. It is really, really hard to start a company that is valued so highly. Almost always, in order to do that, a founder needs to raise capital from venture capitalists, and not only one time, but usually several times. And just for context, keep in mind that less than 10% of startups get funded by venture capital. And of course, the famous statistic, only about 2% of that VC money goes towards female founders. So I know everyone here is probably like, yes, we've heard that statistic. There's a reason for that. The reason is that those numbers have stayed flat for about 30 years. So let me say that again. The 30-year average of all female founders' share of VC funding is, to be precise, 2.4%. That's 0.1% higher today than it was 6 years ago. Nearly 3/4 of US VC firms don't have a single female investing partner. So usually when I say stuff like this, people will ask me 2 things. 1, are women trying to start businesses? And 2, are they actually asking for VC money? So I will say, glad that someone laughed at that. Just a few months ago, the Impact of Women-Owned Business report, which is sponsored by Wells Fargo, was published, and it reported that 39% of all businesses, that equates to over 14 million businesses, are women-owned. So yes, I think we can say that women are starting businesses and owning businesses. And in fact, the number of women-owned businesses during COVID increased at nearly double the rate of those owned by men. During our panel, we'll actually talk a little bit about what the recent pandemic did for the entrepreneurs on this panel. So the second question, like, are women asking for VC money? This is a little bit harder, but I think we can say with certainty that indeed some female founders are asking, but it might be fewer women than men, and I'm just going to give you some data in just a second on that. I promise this is not going to be negative, and it's not. I swear it. So if this sounds grim, don't get worried. In the classes that I teach at the University of Chicago, we talk about why these numbers look like this, and in doing so, how we can position founders to be successful in the fundraising process. So here's some good news. Research does confirm that women are great entrepreneurs. 3 proof points. 1, research from BCG showed that even with the funding disadvantage, women-owned businesses generate higher revenues than the male counterparts, are more capital efficient, and women are more careful about how they spend and use their resources. Number 2, founding teams that have a woman on the team outperform all male teams by 63%. This is data from First Round Capital. And number 3, 17% have successful exits. And if you go back to that BCG study, the average return on investment for women-owned companies was double that of men-owned businesses. So why are we not all jumping on these great opportunities to start and fund and grow female founder businesses? I just am going to close with a little bit of information from one of the recent studies. This is from back in 2018, that I think is one of the most interesting things. And it could be because I work with so many founders at the early stages when they are often pitching their ideas to venture capitalists. So this is a very fascinating study. It was done by a group of researchers from London Business School and Harvard who analyzed a Q&A portion of an entrepreneur pitch event. Some of you will be familiar with this, called TechCrunch Disrupt in New York City. This is a very large event. Lots of people are pitching for money. Lots of entrepreneurs are pitching to VCs for money. The researchers studied the questions and interactions between 140 VCs, a little less than half were women, and 189 entrepreneurs, 12% of which were women. And by the way, that 12% proves that, indeed some women are asking for VC money. But although the ventures were at similar stages, they found the male-led startups raised 5 times the funding of the female ones. The fascinating thing, I think, about this study, and I would encourage you to go read it, was that the questions that the VCs asked the male founders were very different than the questions they asked the female founders. And not different as in a whole different set of questions, but different in that they were promotion-focused rather than prevention-focused. So what I mean by that is that a male founder would get asked, how do you plan to monetize this great opportunity? And a female founder would be asked, how long will it take for you to break even? The former is focused on all the gains that you can envision, and the latter is focused on mitigating losses. The questions to the men were aligned with expectations that their ventures are going to grow, and the women are expected to prove that they can execute a safe return of capital to the investor. So the reality is this, biases exist. We know that. Knowing about them is half the battle. And so my advice, I know there's entrepreneurs in the room, including some of my former students who are in the fundraising stages now. My advice is this: you do not need to play by these rules. If you are sitting here thinking gosh, this sounds not fair, I encourage you to think about how to flip the script literally. If you are asked a prevention question, how will you prevent competitors from taking away your customers? You can answer it with a promotion answer. Our target market is growing incredibly quickly, and we have a great opportunity to serve them. So for anyone in the audience, including my former students, who is contemplating raising money, starting or growing their business, I just want to end with a couple of words of advice based on what the research shows. Number 1, be bold. Most of the VC money goes to tech, healthcare, energy, and media. Think about what you can do in those spaces and set your sights high. You could be in a position to start, grow, and lead the next unicorn startup. Being bold includes your resiliency muscles and strengthening them, and overcoming obstacles and facing the challenges, and this is something we're going to hear about in just a moment from our panelists. The second piece of advice is just learning how to sell. Selling correlates with 100% of company survival. Selling always has had a bad connotation as something maybe sleazy, but it is not. It should lead to a win-to-win exchange of value. Number 3, don't be shy about the ask. Don't be shy about asking things. For whatever reason, women do not ask as much as men. I run and have the pleasure of running a top-tier MBA program in the country. I can tell you that women do not ask as much as men. A professor at CMU did a study recently involving MBAs in particular that showed even in business school, where I think almost 100% of our students take a class on negotiations and are encouraged to negotiate, female MBA graduates do not negotiate their starting salaries after graduation at the same rate as their male counterparts, and it's not even close. 12% of women negotiate their starting salaries versus 52% of men. So my fourth and final point, I'm going to just give you a little bit of Booth, Chicago Booth experience here. We have a mantra at Booth called pay it forward. When you are ready and if you're on the path to success, think about how to pay it forward to the next female founder who has an idea, a vision, or a dream. Maybe you can invest in her, maybe you can mentor her, maybe you just can share your wisdom and help her avoid pitfalls and mistakes. And I want to say, just by being here tonight, I see that all of you are already doing this and paying it forward. So with that, I think we should begin our panel and hear from these phenomenal female founders. Okay, so our first question, I want to take us specifically to what's going on in Chicago. You heard some of those stats about how Chicago has seen some good numbers in terms of female founders raising VC money and starting new businesses. Can I just start by asking each of you to share a little bit about your entrepreneurial journey within Chicago? Are you from Chicago? And how the city has maybe influenced you? And we'll just start there. Yasmin, why don't you start?
Of course. I am Yasmin. I am the owner of Two Fish Crab Shack and Two Fish Distribution. I would say this in terms of like raising money or raising capital, we have not ventured into that space yet. We have been approached by VCs for the distribution arm of our business. We have looked into that, but because our business is unleveraged, both of them, we just declined them at that time. Right now, since we're unleveraged, we're okay. We are women. We are with a woman-owned business. We just kind of make sure that we run a tight budget.
And are you from Chicago?
I am from Chicago, the south side of Chicago. Yes, I am.
Wonderful. Thru, how about you?
Hi, Thru Shivakumar. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Cohesion. It's a smart building software platform. We're about 6 years old, and I spun the technology out of a mechanical engineering company based out of Chicago. I am from Libertyville, Illinois, northern suburbs here, and I've been in this city for over 20 years. Chicago, I think, has been an extremely friendly city for startups in general. I think that a lot of people will support as test bedding and support us overall to innovation. And I think the city's tech ecosystem is pretty fabulous. And I actually the founder of MHub, and I sat in an office at World Business Chicago back in 2014. He started this idea, and I started a water technology accelerator. So this is my second. I started that, but I never ran that business, and so this is my second one. But it's pretty cool to see it all kind of come to life.
That's awesome. So good that we're here at MHub for this event. Jennifer, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Freed. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Flow Medical. We're a cardiovascular device company that treats pulmonary embolism, so blood clots in your lungs. I am not from Chicago, but I've lived here now for 20 years, so I think I'm allowed to say that I'm a Chicagoan. I came here for school to go to Northwestern and then University of Chicago, so don't ask me which baseball team I root for. It gets very divided. And my first company I started when I was in business school with Starr at University of Chicago, which was another medical device company. We sold that in 2021, and I had so much fun that I decided to do it all over again. And so my new company is also a University of Chicago spin-out. So I've really loved having just so many great research institutions around Chicago. I think, for folks that are looking at healthcare and the life sciences in particular, there's so much new innovation that's happening within these great settings. And I love working with physicians to take their ideas and bring it to market, bring it to life.
So let me just ask one quick follow-up question to that, which is that you're on your second startup in this space. Did you ever consider starting the company somewhere other than Chicago? Either of them?
No. And we actually, when we were raising money for Explorer, for my last company, we had some funding offers that were contingent on us moving to Silicon Valley, and that was circa 2016. And I didn't want to do it for personal reasons, but I also think Chicago is a great place to run a company. So I travel almost every week, and I can go anywhere in a day trip from O'Hare, and I can go direct. And a CEO's time is very valuable. So I love that, but also just being surrounded by so many great big companies, research institutions. Also, almost every medical association is headquartered in Chicago, like literally 99% of them. So there's a lot of very good business reasons to build a company in Chicago.
So, thank you, Jennifer. Yasmin, I want to go back to you just really quickly. I realize that maybe not everyone here knows exactly what your business is, or what it was and what it is now. So I want to ask you if you just don't mind telling folks what it was and what it is now.
Okay. So I initially opened up a restaurant in 2016. It's been about 8 years now. And it's a crab boil restaurant. We're still in existence in Bronzeville. So during COVID, of course, restaurants were closed. And because restaurants were closed, I decided that I had to make sure that I was able to connect with our customers, our end consumers. So I decided to package our most popular products frozen and to sell them immediately to the consumers as they decided to come to visit the restaurant if they did not want to sit in. That business, the Two Fish distribution business, has taken legs of its own. And to piggyback off of Jennifer and Thru, manufacturing in Illinois is a manufacturing state. So it was very easy for us in order to build a manufacturing business that manufactured seafood. Although it travels from different countries here, we are still a great hub in order for us to receive our product and in order for me to manufacture the frozen product in Chicago, and it is being done in Chicago and being shipped nationwide now.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah, so exciting. Thru, I want to ask you a question that may be thoughtful for some of the people in our audience who may not be entrepreneurs now, but perhaps are considering it in the future or have an idea in mind. Can we go back a little bit in your entrepreneurial journey to before you were an entrepreneur? And can you share a little bit about the corporate roles that you had in your transition into entrepreneurship? Did you know you always wanted to do that one day? And then I want to ask a related question just about leading, being the CEO, and what you have designed as your leadership strategy for running your own company, whether that was informed by the roles before being an entrepreneur or not.
Great, those are a lot of questions. The first one, I would say I started in corporate America, so I did a classic finance and finance development program right out of college, and I did not belong there. It wasn't my favorite. It was a great training ground, but I had internships all throughout college, and I didn't know, I knew that I wanted to change things. I learned early on that I like to fix things and change things, and I made my way from large, a healthcare company to, I went into real estate right away. So 1 year after college, I went to Hyatt Hotels, and Hyatt at the time had bought this brand of hotels that we took, and it was called AmeriSuites, for those of you who remember that AmeriSuites brand. We recapitalized, repositioned, and then essentially re-emerged that brand to become what became Hyatt Place. So I was on the ground. We were a separate company. We were about 40 people, separate of Hyatt Place. Hyatt Place had just had this beautiful headquarters built, and they did not invite us into that building. And so they said, come over here and help us build this brand. And if it's successful, we will merge that into Global Hyatt. And the first hotel opened, and it was, the flat screens. This is, again, back in 2005. So flat screen TVs, cozy couches, and it became the category leader. Instead of Marriott Courtyard wasn't there yet, neither was Hilton Garden Inn. And so we created the category, and I got to be part of conversations of what did the 9 dots mean? What was that brand? And what was, what do you think about this carpet? And so it was like this entrepreneurial journey inside of a larger company that I thought was really fascinating. Long hours, we had no systems. We didn't have smartphones back then. You had to VPN in, and I had to learn how to quote unquote code, which was run macros and consolidate 400 budgets and do that. So fast forward, I made my way from larger companies down to smaller, and even took a side kind of journey into the city's Economic Development Council called Rural Business Chicago. And I did that because I wanted to learn. I was on this journey in real estate to learn more about how the public-private, more of the structuring of deals went on, and it was there that I met so many different-minded people, right, and how they viewed business in general, how they viewed community, how they viewed buildings, and I opened up my eyes to the various types of people that there are. So I was on this journey to stay on the capital finance side of it, and then I completely pivoted, and I got this great opportunity, and I got pulled over to work with a brilliant civic business person here in Chicago, and I then met, again, this is all very serendipitous. I met somebody in Chicago. I was for a civic thing, and we went out to breakfast, and he and I started talking about this smart building platform that they were going to build. And that got me excited, and then one thing led to another, and that was January of 2018. And June of 2018, we have a handshake. I built a business model. I'm like, you should do this. And he goes, you should do this. And then he said, I'll fund it, you do it. And that was the start of Cohesion. And so we spun it out, and it's been great. And in the mix of all of it, it's been a lot of corporate learnings have actually led me to assuring my shareholders that from a corporate governance standpoint, I'm actually leading the business in a very very process-oriented way, and I think that's helped me on that journey. So pivoting to how I lead now, some of the things that I hated in corporate America, some of the things that I hated, I don't do. So everyone has voice in my company. Everyone has the ability to share their opinion. We do try, and everyone knows who's going to make the last opinion if there's dissension from that. But I think in general, it's what I hear from my employees is that everyone can have their voice heard and their opinion heard. And I think that's important for diversity as we get into that conversation as well. And it's allowing them to see their purpose. And I think bringing in those processes are a big part of why we've been succeeding, is that we have a balance of both.
Yeah, so interesting. Thank you. Jennifer, I want to build on that for you. You're on your second startup. Are there challenges doing it the second time around, or can you just apply all the lessons that were learned from the first experience?
I was a little hesitant going into it, wondering if it would be as much fun, right? And it's kind of like when I had my second kid, I'm like, are you ever going to love your second kid as much as you love your first kid, right? And then you realize your heart can grow and you can love both of your kids. And I am actually having so much more fun this time around than I did the first time. I think I'm taking everything that I learned in stride from the first one, and I'm absolutely making mistakes. I'm still making mistakes. Every single day I make mistakes. I'm not making the same mistakes that I did before. And I think just having perspective and also being in this market environment is so unusual. I have not seen a market environment like this in my career. And so I have to remind myself that you're doing this because you love the journey, right? Because there is no guarantee of success at the end of the day. So you have to do something that you love and that you believe in, and you wake up every day and you're excited to do what you're doing. And I am just having so much fun.
So I don't want to focus on the negatives because I promise this is going to be the positives, but I'm just curious if you can say a little bit more. What are the biggest challenges maybe with the current market environment that you are facing?
Yeah, so I think just broadly, this is a very difficult fundraising environment. When you think about just some of the macro things that have happened over the last few years, valuations have fallen off of a cliff. And so when you start to look at what that's done to the venture community, I also have many, many close friends who I'd say are, kind of 3 to 5 years into being partners with their venture funds. This is a tough time to have portfolio companies that you had funded in 2020, 2021, early 2022. So for VCs, their fundraising is way down, so there's less new cash coming in. A lot of their cash is being preserved to support existing portfolio companies. So I think it is the hardest fundraising environment that I've seen, in more than 15 years, I think, for new companies. And so that's a huge challenge. I'm very happy that we successfully fundraise, and I think a lot of that came because I'm an experienced founder. But I think that's just a general market environment right now that it's difficult.
Yeah. I think that's important for people to hear. Thank you. Yasmin, let me come back to you. So you shared with everyone that you made this big pivot as a result of COVID, which I think is very entrepreneurial and very exciting. I'm wondering if you can share a little bit of what strategies you used to be able to pivot that quickly into something else. Were you concerned that this wouldn't work? Were you just thinking you knew that there would be demand for the packaged good version of what you had? And I'm just curious about the team. So you had a restaurant and people who were working or supporting you there. When you made this big pivot, did you bring the team with you? Did people not want to pivot?
Yeah. So I'll start answering, and no. So no, they did not want to pivot. So they did not want to pivot. So basically, you start a new company. So the product, the CPG product, it was a completely different line of business. It's not the same business as running a restaurant. So there are completely different levels of personalities now that you have to manage in order to start that business. So when I started the restaurant, I can definitely hire from bottom up, and I would be okay with that. But in starting a distribution business, now I have to hire from top down in order to make sure that I'm able to scale. So those personalities were completely different. And in terms of in just managing from, it is wild because you are managing literally two different companies with very, very different skill sets in two different ways. Like I said, the restaurant, the hiring process is completely different. I would hire anybody who comes to me who needs a job. That is one process for the restaurant because we can train you in a very different way. However, for the distribution, now I have to hire from top down because I have to make sure that I have a complete operation in every aspect of the business. And now we have to make sure that we have to have a middle management. So we have to have a different level of compliance. So we have to have, there are different set of guidelines when you are sending product across the country, the regulatory guidelines, the sustainability of the food, where you are now, the traceability of every product that you send out now has to be managed. That is a completely different business. That is a completely different person. So sometimes I'm like 4 people. But it's just completely different in terms of, and the people from the restaurant, no, they did not want to go at all because they are customer-facing people. They want to talk to people. And even the people in the kitchen, they're used to a fast-paced environment. So they're used to moving. They do not want to go and work in a manufacturing company where they see no people and it is white walls, literally. So they don't want to do that. So it is just a different business.
So I hope you don't mind. I have to share just one anecdote that Yasmin shared before we started this panel. In case you didn't know, her restaurant in Bronzeville, before COVID, had a 2-hour waiting time to get into it. And so when you say your people were customer facing and the customer experience was probably pretty special and wonderful, I think that adds some context to what you just said, having to go in a very different direction and know, it's a different skill set, just like you said. So Thru, let me start with you with the next question, which is just back to Chicago as an ecosystem, Chicago as a place where all of you have shared the benefits of being here, whether it's manufacturing, and Chicago's a manufacturing town, the faculty and the doctors who you've worked with, Jennifer, and through your great experience with being involved in the civic ecosystem with World Business Chicago and just the ecosystem here. I'm just curious, how do you think the Chicago challenges compare to other U.S. metropolitan areas? And are there things that you wish Chicago would have in the entrepreneurial ecosystem to help female founders like you that you see in other geographies?
That's a tough one. I think for us, we're in the buildings and the commercial real estate market, so it's a very localized market, depending on depending on what city you're at. Like, if we think about return to office right now and how cities are kind of handling that, we've got New York back at like 75, 80%, Chicago's close to like 50, 60%, San Francisco is like at 20%, LA kind of down. So you're seeing a lot of regional and very city-based differences in terms of that. And so us being on the buildings front, it is challenging for us from a sales perspective to make sure that we understand those markets and understand who's buying and who's actually investing in their spaces. From an entrepreneurial standpoint, I think, there's post-COVID, I can say. I think pre-COVID we were slightly different, but there's a lot more networking events and a lot more gatherings for entrepreneurs to come together. I think they're coming back in Chicago, but what I see is that if you're going to throw an event, it's got to start at 3:30 or 4 o'clock, right? If it starts at 6 p.m., nobody's going to the events, and it's starting to eat into kind of the work days, and your work days are shorter from a commute perspective when you're trying to bring folks back into the buildings. So I think, and I don't think this is a Chicago-only problem. I think this is a pretty national problem, and it is a U.S. problem, right? The return to office is not a problem globally. It is a very U.S.-based problem. Asia Pacific is back because they have multi-generational households in their homes, and they need to leave to go work. Europe is back too, same thing, very small spaces, but the U.S. is grappling with this. And I think we're going to see hopefully I'm obviously pro-office, if you haven't figured out, and I think that we should be back in buildings, but I think it's more the community-based stuff that I'm hoping comes back in a big way.
Thank you. And Jennifer, just building on this Chicago versus other geographies question, you talked about some of the current market issues with fundraising and how challenging it is. Do you think Chicago is any different than any other city for fundraising for startups right now, either specific to health tech or not specific to health tech?
Chicago's always had less venture funding. I think this contraction that we're seeing is likely a consistent contraction across the country. I'm sure there's data on it, but I think we're seeing that change everywhere. But we need a lot more early stage capital in Chicago, and there's movement that's happening. And I think it's going in the right direction. It's not there yet, but I also think COVID has opened up a lot of people's eyes. So, the idea that a VC in 2016 would say, we're only going to fund you if you move your company to Silicon Valley, that doesn't happen anymore. That doesn't exist anymore. So, and you can do a lot more investor meetings when people will meet you over Zoom instead of saying, come fly and meet me. So I think all of that is helping get more Chicago companies funded from those trends in general, but it's just everything is so contracted.
So one thing I also want to share that hasn't come up yet, but to share with the audience is it okay if I share with them what you were doing before starting your first venture?
Yeah.
So Jennifer was working in venture capital, so she has seen the other side of this equation that we are talking about. Do you ever, I think I know the answer to this, but do you ever regret going the entrepreneur route?
Zero regrets. And I still do some investing, a little bit personally and part-time, but investing is always going to be there versus I think when you have an entrepreneurial opportunity, timing is really of the essence for anything that you're doing. You can have a great opportunity, you can be solving a big problem, but if it's not the right time, then it's not going to work. So if you have that opportunity and it is that big thing and you love it and you're passionate, you want to do it, and it is that right time, like grab the bull by the horns, and then you can make your own money and invest it however you want instead of doing it for LPs.
Very good. I'll also share, before this, she was in consulting. I assume you don't miss the consulting days, but
I do not miss my consulting days.
Just to put it out there. Thru, let me come back to you for just a minute, because you talked about the buildings and getting people back into the buildings, and Cohesion your mission is to create sustainable and smart building solutions. I wonder if you can just talk a little bit about how you navigate some of the regulatory challenges, whether that is, it's certainly, I think, a unique hurdle to other people being able to do what you're doing, but may also introduce other challenges that other entrepreneurs don't have. Jennifer has this in the healthcare space. I'm curious, how have you navigated some of the regulatory challenges and any advice you would have for anyone here?
I think regulatory-wise, we wish we had more regulation around buildings and smart buildings, and having the guidance to ESG reporting, energy reporting, and benchmarks. And right now, it's fairly loose, and there's no consistency from municipality to municipality. I think the hardest challenge for us is the change management of the buildings. So getting people to change how they see, buildings have always run this way, so they're going to continue to run this way. No, you can't touch my HVAC systems because that's my HVAC systems. You're going to ruin something. So there's this whole change management piece of like the folks that run buildings, and we're seeing that it's a lot of education, right? So we have to spend a lot of time educating. We've got to go into real technical flows and diagrams and make them understand that we're not going to blow up your building. We're actually making it more secure for you from a cybersecurity standpoint, as buildings are now kind of targets of attack as it relates to hacking. And I think for us, we kind of push on the energy front. There's still a lot to be desired from an energy perspective. So what's happening right now, regulatory-wise, is that they'll say here's a reduction, the percent reduction, but not really the baseline or where they have to go or what carbon looks like. So there's still things that we hope will change, and there's obviously cities that are doing a lot, like New York is doing a ton around that. I think Chicago's updating our climate change goals, and Denver's doing stuff, and California's got some things.
Do you spend your time advocating for some of those changes with
We do
the
with
folks in the city?
Yeah, not just the city, but like federally, right? A lot of this is going to come federally, and the White House just last week announced that they've got now a plan on decarbonization of buildings as a whole. So we're starting to see more movement around it, but unfortunately, it is going to be a political thing, and so we'll have to navigate what the next 9 months is going to look like, because if there's an administration change, that will change how much people are going to care about smart buildings and or carbon on it.
Yep. Very
so we wait
true.
and see.
Yes, I mean, I imagine your team is thinking through potential impacts of the upcoming election and how things might change.
Yeah, you have to look at kind of the global then strategy, because the rest of the world is, the rest of the world and countries are in different places. So you can grow in different areas of the world based on that.
Thank you. Yasmin, let's talk a little bit just about community and the local communities. Your restaurant is in Bronzeville. I'm curious how you perceive the role of local communities in shaping the success of startups, maybe in food and beverage specifically, or whether you experienced any instance where the community feedback directly influenced your decisions, either in your business strategy or your product.
Okay. I am very, I do a lot of community engagement in Bronzeville. So I am very aware of the community as Bronzeville continued to change in terms of the housing market in Bronzeville. The community in Bronzeville is ever changing. Right now it's on an upswing in terms of real estate and families coming into Bronzeville. Bronzeville now is a community that is changing so that it is a more walkable community, so that it is a more safe community, so that now it is a community that families can live in, and they're raising their children more in Bronzeville. It had taken a turn in probably the early 80s or 90s, but as it continues to change for now, within these past 10 years or 10 to 15 years, Bronzeville now is becoming a premier community in the city of Chicago. So that is one of the reasons why I decided to say, okay, we're going to place, Two Two Fish Crab Shack in this community, because Bronzeville definitely is a community that needs businesses. We need more businesses in that community in order so that it can be walkable, so that it can match the homes that are being built in Bronzeville. Now the average price for a home in Bronzeville is up in the $700 to $1 million in terms of average price for a home. And the people that live in those homes, that buy those homes, want to make sure that that community is walkable, want to make sure that they have quality restaurants, and want to make sure that they have quality places to dine. So that is one of the reasons why, that is actually the reason why I placed Two Fish Crab Shack in Bronzeville.
And what does community engagement look like for you? How do you engage with the community?
Well, one, I'm usually out there with them. No, so, but I speak to everybody, right? So I would say, like, you know, in terms of like community engagement, what that looks like for me, we for just as an event, we do on Thanksgiving, we have free Thanksgiving food in the community, but it is not your cookie cutter Thanksgiving meal. It is an all-out spread, like lamb chops and crab legs and such, you know, so that we can make sure that any person who does not have a meal, it does not matter whether you are rich or poor, whatever it is that you have, we want to make sure that you're able to come and visit our space. And we want you to know that you are allowed in our space in order to dine with us no matter what happens. So those are just some things that's just one event that we have for community engagement. We definitely hire the youth. We make sure that we keep a consistent rotation of young people on our staff. That is very important to me because we have a lot of young people who just know how to text and they do not have conversations. So it is very important to me to make sure that I hire young people to learn how to approach people and to say hi, like, hey, do not look down. Like you have to, so that is one of the things that is important as I continue to hire, you know, the youth throughout the city of Chicago or in Bronzeville. It doesn't matter where you're from, but as long as you are young enough, and I just look up. So that is one of the things for me.
That's wonderful. Okay, Thru, let me go back to you for just a second. I want to go back to a comment you made about hiring and making sure every voice is heard, and that as one of the cultural things that you have wanted to do with your company that maybe is different from what you saw in the corporate experiences that you had. Chicago ranks second actually for startups founded by people of color. 24.4% have at least one founder of color, and we're here talking about female founders and supporting the presence of a diverse group within the entrepreneurial ecosystem. Can you just share a little bit about what your strategy is to ensure that every voice is heard? Are you hiring, you know, for diversity in your leadership team, or how are you creating that culture for Cohesion?
So our company is over 70% diverse, not just females, not just race. We've got age and sexual identity and all sorts of diversity, and we're really proud of that. And we don't make a conscious effort to hire in that manner, but I think people start to talk, right, about the diversity and of the teams that they see. Our website, our photos, our LinkedIn, our, who's on the team. When they come in to interview, we do want people to interview a multitude of people, not just meet one person. And we ask behavioral questions, and we've got Meg in the audience here is our head of people, and she does a fantastic job of looking at the type of people that we want. We've done a lot over the years. We've learned kind of who will work, who will not work. What are some of the kind of answers that people say in their in the interviews itself, and we really want the openness to be heard, and they have opinions. Like, we like the opinions in the interview process, and so a lot of that is we'll do sometimes the behavioral tests, but we found some companies being very, very accurate, and then some, it just comes to how you end up working. But we do, when we have round robins, everybody talks. So we do a monthly all-staff meeting where everybody learns about the company, and we talk about everything from did we hit our numbers to who, from a sales perspective, what did we win, and here's our hires, here's our anniversaries, here's what somebody did. And so we just talk a lot about people, and we celebrate. We do a lot of in-person events, and we do have remote employees, and we bring them into events as well. But I think the voice part is important, and I know I have a new marketing manager in the audience as well, and one of the things that she said was recently to me is that it's nice that I can have a voice and I can be heard. So it's all about, it doesn't matter who you are, everybody gets to talk, and I think that's big for us.
Jennifer, let me go to you and ask a very similar question. Are there things that you are doing to set the company culture from the ground up?
That's something, it's funny, it's so different than my last company. So when we sold my last company, we had a team of 40. And now I'm literally the only full-time employee. So for medical device, in these early days, until you start to get closer, until clinical studies and commercialization, the strategy we're really following is almost all consultants and contractors. So we have a huge number of people that are working on our device, probably 15 to 20 on any given day, but they're not full-time employees of Flow. So that has been very different, and you can't really set a culture until you have the same group of people that are all interacting. So I have a lot of ideas, but for now, I am actually really enjoying working from home a couple days a week by myself and the flexibility that provides. So ask me this question again in a year.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. And I know we're getting short on time, so let me just, I could think, build a little bit on what you just said about working from home, to just say, from all the entrepreneurs I've ever worked with, it is a grueling experience at times. It can also be a very lonely experience at times. I'm going to start with you, Jennifer. How do you prioritize your well-being while being an entrepreneur? So
I have some pretty firm boundaries that I set for myself in terms of family time. And it's generally, before 8 a.m. and from 6 to 8 p.m. every night, unless I'm traveling. That is pretty hardcore, family time, being with my kids. And I also work out almost every day, and I usually do it during the workday, because the reality of having kids is I'm not a 5 a.m. person, no way. So I'm always sneaking out, whether it's my Peloton or to run to a noon class. So, if you're not taking care of yourself, you can't take care of anybody else. So I prioritize those things, but I also, I'm in Hyde Park a day a week. I'm usually traveling 1 or 2 days a week. So I really love being at home, and I think that has been a welcome change for me from being in the office 5 days a week. So I was having a tough day a few days ago at work. We had an NIH grant, this technical issue, and it's 5:30, and I'm almost with my day, and my 5-year-old comes in. He goes, "Mommy, you're having a tough day. Maybe we should eat chips and salsa and watch Mulan." I was like, we should. And I just closed my laptop and we ate a whole bag of tortilla chips, and it was wonderful. So those are, I think, the blessings of, being the CEO, being able to make those decisions, creating your own schedule, and prioritizing the things that matter to you, because you are driving really hard at that business. It doesn't matter if you're offline for an hour in the middle of the day. For whatever it is that you want to do, you're going to get it done.
Can I ask both of you to also chime in on this topic?
Well, my faith is very big in my being. So that is one of the things that I use in order to keep me grounded and to keep me centered. A lot of, right now, I don't work on Saturday or Sunday. So if you have ever been in the restaurant industry, you know that Saturday and Sunday has been the busiest days. So for me to actually have a weekend that has been very, that's just a good start for me to say, okay, I have this time for myself. So I am trying to just make sure that I'm just continuously Monday through Friday and not work on Saturday and Sunday. Other than that, by running a business that's open 7 days a week, I'm usually working 7 days a week, 24 hours a day.
Wow, that is intense. Thru, how about you?
Tequila. I mean, come on. I'm just kidding. Exactly. That is exactly what's in there. How'd you know? But in all seriousness, no, I think the biggest thing that I changed in the last couple of years is being vulnerable with my team and talking to them about the problems that I'm having so I don't feel alone. It is a lonely job, and you're dealing with a lot of different things. I have male board issues. I've got, all sorts of investor questions, and we always have employee problems. Like, there's a lot that we talk about, and I trust in my team, and I think having those honest conversations and being like, what would you do? Like, I don't have the answers. What would you do? And getting their feedback and their input and voice there, I think it leads to a stronger culture in general, but also just stronger. It helps me overall. So.
It's great to hear each of your strategies and how you navigate it. It does not sound easy, although I think you've all put some thought into how to make it through day to day and keep going. I think we're just about out of time, so I just want to wrap up by saying thank you to each of you for sharing some of yourself, some of your personal journey, your perspectives on entrepreneurship in Chicago, and just as female founders. I think this was a wonderful panel, super insightful. I hope the audience enjoyed hearing from each of you. So thank you very much for spending this time with us. I want to invite Jessica Fairchild up to the stage for some closing remarks.
Okay. Thank you. That's where I was going to start, thanking our panelists. What an engaging and wonderful conversation. Thank you to Yasmin, Thru, and Jennifer for your engaging and candid remarks tonight. And thank you, Starr, especially for moderating. Let's give everybody a round of applause. That was great. As Starr mentioned, I'm Jessica Fairchild. I'm the co-founder of the law firm Croak Fairchild, Duarte and Barris, and I'm a fellow member of the Executive Club of Advisors here. We heard tonight something that comes as no surprise to me, which is that women are naturally great leaders. Women are fabulous communicators, and women are risk takers. All of that sets a strong foundation for women to succeed as business owners. In my role as leading my law firm as an angel investor, I'm proud to support women in their efforts to follow their dreams and improve the world as they found, grow, and perhaps sell their own businesses. Women are much needed in the entrepreneurship ecosystem, as you heard tonight, and I hope that everyone here will find their own way to support women in these endeavors, including through some of the challenging times that we heard about today. On behalf of the Executive Club of Chicago and the other presenting sponsors, thank you for joining us tonight. I believe MHub is going to offer a tour of the space if you'd like to stick around, so we invite you to stay, mingle, and continue the conversation. Thank you.